And a good afternoon to you once again from the sports desk as we continue building up to that big game. The Springboks are minutes away from that kickoff in their second test against Ireland. This time in Durban, the anticipation is building at Kings Park as the venue hosts the four-time world champions for the first time since they won last year's World Cup. Newzroom Afrika's Vuyo Macoba joins us once again. Vuyo, it's just minutes now as we count down to the kickoff for that big game. What is the situation looking like as far as the build-up for this big game, 1 and 2?
Good afternoon once again to you, Gwen, and to the Newzroom Afrika viewers. From the fans' point of view, I can tell you, one side being the South Africans, I think they've come out in numbers to show support to the world champions. And of course, with that eagerness that it will turn out just as they wished or desired tonight, that the Springboks can finally crash this conversation between Ireland as who's the best team in the world. So all optimism is here from the South African side, and the green and gold that have come in to embrace the Springboks here to say tonight is our night, and we're going to send the Irish team packing or in tears. From the Irish side as well, they come into this match trying to draw that series, at least giving them leeway to still have that conversation about the best team in the world. But then you look at the two sides. Look at the Springboks, who are coming to this match as an unchanged team from last weekend at Loftus when they beat the Irish team 27-20. And as the coaches building up to this, in the likes of Mzwandile Stiko, Rassie Erasmus, they kept saying that why change something that's working? Hence then you see an unchanged squad in the Springbok side. For the Irish side, a couple of changes have been made, 4 changes, and of course 3 of them being forced changes, and with Peter Mahoney, who was the captain, dropping to the bench. And of course then that changes a little bit of a dynamic from their side when it comes to the coaching side in terms of the strategy coming to this match here at Kings Park. But I can tell you now, when from both the coaches or both the camps, both still optimistic that tonight they can turn out as victors. For South Africa, sealing the series and getting that, that whitewash against the Irish side, and of course a good momentum going to the Portugal game next week and later on in the year, the Rugby Championship, and the Irish side as well, in their sense, hoping that they can go out and at least draw the series tonight. Now, I think we are trickling down just minutes before the start of the anthems that are going to be sung inside. Remember what at Loftus was done when the South African anthem was sung. Many of the fans have just walked in and have sealed their places. I'm going to ask Gift just to show you at the top there of King Park Stadium. Some of the fans are already seated. And that's the top area of it, just showing you a sense that, many of the fans would have really wanted to be in this, vicinity because of the Springboks as the world champions, but they would even get tickets as far as the top at the back. And I think those were kind of the similar scenes that we saw at Loftus Stadium last weekend when the Boks rocked out. So as we trickle down and count down to those minutes, a lot of optimism, Kwena, a lot of optimism from the South African fans about this game today. And I guess, a thrilling encounter should be expected today. Kwena?
On the Irish side, I mean, obviously coming from that loss in the test at Loftus Versfeld, what is the expectation, as we know that Rassie has decided to go with an unchanged lineup for this game? But what's the Irish team looking like?
For the Irish team, as I mentioned a bit earlier on, I mean, those 3 forced changes because of the injuries had to be made. And I guess, like with the captain and his impact in the game, being pushed to, of course, the bench in Peter O'Mahony. But the sense from Andy Farrell, when you go into his interviews building up to this game, has that he would have liked his Irish team to produce, of course, an improved performance, because of last week they had, and I quote him, that they had this build-up, and especially leading up to the captain's run in the capital last week, where everything was on form, everything was in sequence, and they thought definitely they are going out to that, into that game, and they would definitely get a win. But things that just didn't work out into the game. So I guess this side is the transition of what happens at training being able to play out in the game last week. He's expecting a lot from the Irish side in terms of an improved performance. But one other thing that Andy Farrell did say in the build-up to this, that he acknowledges the strength of the Springbok side going into these, especially these 2 test matches, and is expecting the Springboks to not just be as good as Loftus last weekend, but to be twice as good in this match today. Gwena?
It was a bruising encounter, and almost in the dying minutes of the game, we saw how strong the Irish side is. Did Rassie Erasmus speak to just being cautious in terms of the approach to the game and making sure that they close out the Irish, because they are not the second best team in the world for nothing, and also, you know, Six Nations champions, so definitely a team that cannot be taken lightly.
Definitely, Kwena, Rassie Erasmus was loud regarding that, to say we can't sit back now because we saw those last period of the last match, how dangerous the Irish team is. They are second best in the world, and I'm quoting him, they are second best for a reason. So definitely they're not sitting on their laurels going into this match. And Rassie Erasmus was definite on that we also need to improve. And as much as the Springboks would have walked away with the win last weekend, the camp on their side are still not fully convinced about, you know, the type of play that they still want to get. Yes, it's still early days in this new cycle of the World Cup that they're building. And Rassie Erasmus is, of course, happy with the new crop of the players that are still coming in, and they've put up their hands in the likes of Sasha Mgombe-Zulu and the rest. But he still needs more from the Springboks. And this game is going to prove today. He's asking them to just be a notch up, because the Irish team are going to be picking up their game today. We remember what the Irish team was able to do to the Springboks in that group stage match last year at the World Cup. So those are the type of things. And of course, the Irish team being one of the teams that the South African side have not been able to get over. They've been able to get over the rest, but not the Irish side. So that's just proved their pedigree as a team in this. And Rassie Erasmus is holding a lot of caution coming into this game. And I think another thing, Kwena, that I need to put out is, you look at the South African team, you look at, yes, we are at the home of the Sharks. And one of the things that we need to push aside is the fact that, yes, you've got Sharks players that are coming into this match, and one might look at the fact that this is their home ground, and maybe those are the guys that are going to be able to pick up their hands and do best for the Springboks today. But if you remember the URC season, this was not a good stomping ground even for the Sharks here. And there was even a period where some of the Sharks fans even booed their own. But I can tell you today that the rest of the team, and not just relying on some of the Sharks players going into this match, is putting up their hands going into this game. And Rassie is asking for more than what they did last week at Loftus. Kwena?
Vuyo Macoba, thank you very much for keeping us up to speed. Vuyo Macoba out there at the Kings Park Stadium, where the Springboks will be taking on the Irish in the second test. And with the Springboks having won the first one at Loftus Versfeld, this one's kicking off in just about 7 or so minutes.